Hello everybody, my name is Steve Mylett. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Bellevue. This past weekend we had a protest in the city, and that has raised a lot of questions on our response and how we did things. So instead of responding to a lot of email, I thought that I would ask our Public Information Officer, Megan Black, to sit down with me, ask me some very pointed, direct questions to get information into your hands. So with that, Megan.
So Chief, when did we learn about the protest, and what did you learn about the group that was organizing it?
So we learned about the protest on, I think it was Monday afternoon. We saw some of the posts from this particular group that they were coming into Bellevue and they were going to engage in the same type of behavior that they've been known for in Seattle. So when we saw that, we reached out to our partners across the lake and asked them what their experience was with this particular group. They gave us a lot of information. This particular group has been very active up in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, and to include some violent behavior, and that raised a lot of concern for me. And so based on that, we started mobilizing our resources and preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, but we started preparing.
So they arrived Saturday evening, right on time. They said they'd be here at 6 o'clock, downtown Park. They showed up, and then they migrated to marching in the streets. Mm-hmm. Why do police allow the marching in the streets?
So everybody has a constitutional right to assemble. Everybody has a constitutional right to protest. What people don't have a constitutional right to do is to damage property or assault people, and that includes police officers. So our job is to ensure that we provide a safe space for people to be able to lift their voices up, to be heard, and to engage in constitutionally protected activity. And this particular group, as many other that have preceded them, took to the streets. They marched, they raised their voices, they lifted the issues that were important to them, and we provided that safe space. What caused us to have the response that we did, and I think we'll get into it here shortly, is all of the information that we were able to develop before they even arrived. And then based on some of their actions prior to the event and their communication on social media, that determined what kind of response we were going to have to ensure the safety of the public.
So let's talk about some of those things, some of that behavior, because some of the questions on social media and that we've received emails is, why was it necessary to call for a civil emergency and a weapons ban? So I think the two kind of go hand in hand.
So when that happened, it was the totality of everything. And there was one particular act that they started to engage in right before I requested that the mayor sign that order that pushed us kind of over the concern level. Again, going back to Monday, we started doing our research. We started doing some background on this particular group. Again, their track record is very known, and members associated with this group have broken windows, they've set dumpsters on fire, they have used improvised explosive devices, they've assaulted police officers with those devices. They are, again, engaged in that violent behavior, and we're not going to tolerate that in Bellevue. In addition to that, they posted something on social media that it was obvious that they were doing some recon in our city. They were seen doing it. We found, the city of Bellevue, not the government of Bellevue, but businesses in Bellevue, found buckets of rocks strategically placed in the area where they had been marching, that they would later march throughout the city. There was propane tanks that were strategically placed near a business that was a target of that particular group. These propane canisters were found in the bushes. They were seen probing in different areas of Bellevue the days leading up. And then they posted something on social media. It was a map of the downtown park, and there was circles, there was other verbiage about the the setup of downtown Park, what kind of cover it would provide them, and things that they could or couldn't do based on the layout of downtown Park. Then they went and put a square around an entire area of our business district that has cameras and surveillance. And they specifically said, stay away from this area because these cameras are rolling and the business is going to share the information with the police department, thus revealing their identity. Who does that? Who's concerned about that? If you're coming into the city to peacefully protest, why would you be concerned about your image being captured? Now, I'm sure that there are people that don't want their image captured, but some of those groups are the ones that come in and engage in violent behavior. So all of that leading up to, plus there's things I know that I can't share with you, Megan, or the public. There's sensitive issues, intelligence resources that we have. All of that laid the foundation for the concern. Now, again, our hope was that they were going to come into our city and peacefully protest, and we're going to give them that space. But I couldn't run the risk of not being prepared. And so we requested mutual aid from area law enforcement agencies, and they responded. We were in the wings. Depending upon what their actions would be, would determine our reaction. The fire department, our fire chief, Jay Hagan, also, based on the activities in Seattle, mobilized his resources in the fire service, and we had fire resources staged. And people didn't see those because they weren't needed. When this particular group arrived, I was out in the field with Major Tarantino, and we had come across a handful of the individuals getting out of their car. And we contacted them, and we welcomed them to Bellevue, and I asked them specifically, are you here to tear up my city? And they wouldn't respond. And I asked them again, are you here to tear up the city and cause damage? And they wouldn't respond. And I said, look, if you're here to peacefully protest, welcome to Bellevue. We're going to provide you that safe space. But if you're here to engage in criminal actions and break windows and set dumpsters on fire and assault police officers, you've come to the wrong city because you will be held accountable and you'll be arrested. And it was at that moment that one of the individuals that I was talking to put their head down and said, well, we're not going to cause damage, Chief. I said, okay, great, fantastic. You will see a lot of resources out here to ensure your safety, and let's have a safe event.
So, Chief, some of what I'm seeing online, and I received some phone calls as well, is frustration with shutting down intersections for a protest like this, businesses having to board up their windows. What would you say to those people today who are, they're just fed up with all this?
I understand the frustration. I am. And I really hope that we get to a point someday where the issues that are leading to these marches, to these protests, to these rallies that we're seeing in Bellevue and elsewhere, that these issues are resolved once and for all, and that there's not a need for groups to come out and feel like they need to protest. But I think we have a long way to go with that. And I just want to be clear, Megan, that we did not recommend people board up. We didn't discourage it. Our messaging leading up, we engaged the Chamber of Commerce, the Bellevue Downtown Association. Why those two groups specifically? Because we knew that the focus of this protest was going to be the downtown corridor. My bike officers got off their bicycles and went into the individual stores that we thought were going to be targeted to share the most updated information. We did Zoom meetings the day before with the public. Again, getting our message out as much as we possibly can because we need the public to be prepared. Not to instill fear in them, but to bring awareness. And again, yes, I understand the frustration. When we closed down the street and we closed down an intersection, fortunately for us, the disruption to the motor vehicle traveling public was minimal. There was about 100 people that were here, and they were marching, and they stopped periodically at different places, but for the most part, they were on the move. So there was no one place that was shut down more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And so was it a disruption in people's lives? Yes. But I would submit that it was a minor disruption in that particular case. For people to, again, engage in their constitutionally protected rights to assemble, march, and lift their voices up. And in terms of the civil order that came out, once we met that threshold, again, working with the city attorney's office and our city attorney specifically, we have to meet a certain threshold legally. Once we met it, then I asked for the order to be signed. We didn't leave that order in effect 1 minute longer than it needed to be, and we didn't ask for it 1 minute earlier than what we needed it. It was about a 3-hour period, and it specifically banned weapons in a geographical area of Bellevue. Weapons, when I'm talking about weapons, I'm talking about anything that could be modified to a weapon to cause damage. Now, there's always the question, well, what about the dad that's going to the park to, hit balls to their son or daughter, or the mom that's going to the park to do the same? That's not what we're talking about. We have the burden still that if you're carrying something, I have to meet a reasonable certainty that you're about to use this for a criminal act. So if you're carrying a baseball bat and you're wearing if you're carrying a baseball bat and you're wearing a gas mask and you got body armor and you got a shield and you are part of a large group that has been known for damaging property, yeah, you're probably going to use that baseball bat in the furtherance of a crime. But if it's Megan Black that's going down into the downtown park to play baseball with your child, with somebody, we're not taking your baseball bat. And no, you're not going to be arrested because it's obvious you're not there to commit a criminal act. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So the frustration, yes, I understand the frustration. But our job, again, is to provide that safe space for everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what your message is. We're going to provide that safe space so long as you work within the framework of the law. You step out and you start committing criminal acts, then we're going to enforce the law.
So I remember listening that evening, you said at one point you saw some of these protesters put gas masks on,
Yeah.
and that was part of what precipitated the civil emergency order.
So yes, and I thank you for bringing me back to the question, Megan. It was at that moment when they were clumped together and they started putting on their body armor, gas masks. They pulled out shields. Again, based on our history in Bellevue, which predates me with all of the protests we've had in this city, I've been here 5.5 years. I've never seen a group do that unless they were gearing up for a fight or they were gearing up to engage in violent behavior. So when that happened, we're not waiting, Megan, in Bellevue, for the windows to get broken. We're not waiting for the dumpsters to get set on fire. And we're not waiting for the IEDs to come out and to be launched against police officers. Once we've met that legal threshold and working with our city attorney's office, once we've met that, then I asked the mayor to sign the order to allow us to get ahead of any kind of violent behavior. And she did. And where I go, and I know we'll get here, is the end result. I am quite convinced that there were a lot of backpacks that the individuals were carrying. And I am quite convinced that there were things in those backpacks that if they would have been allowed to, they would have come out and we would have had a different result than what we did.
You mentioned mutual aid. So there's some question as to why do we need to have officers from other jurisdictions come to Bellevue?
There is no police department across our country that is staffed enough to handle very, very large events. Even the most well-staffed agency like the New York Police Department, again, going back during the May timeframe, they got overwhelmed because of the amount of people they were dealing with. Because we have limited resources in the city of Bellevue, as do the other agencies, we rely on each other to be there when we ask for help. We have been there for just about every agency in our region when something that they're faced with exhausts their resources. And this one, again, in the preparation, based on everything I've talked about, all of our intel, all of the information that we were able to gather, information that this particular group was sharing on social media, led me to believe that what we were going to potentially be dealing with in Bellevue was not, we didn't have the resources by ourselves to deal with. So I asked for mutual aid, and several cities responded, and again, the end result, it was a safe event.
And in return, Bellevue will show up when other municipalities
Consistently,
need it.
absolutely, yes.
Okay. Some said, given the fact that everything went well and they were peaceful, that we overreacted. How would you respond to that?
So some will say that we overreacted if we didn't do enough, and then we had the damage that we were expecting, then we weren't prepared enough. And there's never, you know, I learned a long time ago that we're not going to be able to satisfy everybody's concern and needs. Again, the end result: no injuries, no property damage, no broken windows, no dumpsters on fire, no buildings on fire, nobody injured to include police officers.
Right.
Nobody went to jail except for one person that was driving while license suspended. It was a safe event. We were able to provide a safe environment for everybody. We had a wedding going on in the downtown park when this thing first kicked off. You had our restaurants that were filled. You had people that were walking throughout Bellevue during this event. This particular group was given that space to lift their voices, to raise the issues that are important to them, while ensuring the safety of everybody else. We had counter-protesters in our city, and there was a collision between these two groups. If we weren't prepared and if we didn't have enough resources, what could have happened? You have two very different ideologies at play here, and they were about to collide. We were that peacemaker in that moment. Was it an overreaction? No, it wasn't. Based on everything that we knew, we were prepared for the worst. But the worst didn't happen. And I think it's because we were prepared and we were present.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.